Sup Swarm, Sketchy here, and ooh, there go that dress again. I'm giving my thoughts on the 9th episode of the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, Raging Bully, and man, I don't even know where to start or how I'm gonna fit it all into 5 minutes, but we're gonna try, y'all. So, La Cienega is having her quinceañera, and the arrival of her Aunt Melrose and cousin La Brea brings out a lot of unresolved drama to the surface. The episode attempts to be a story about generational trauma, but in a post-Encanto world, this ain't gonna cut it. Honestly, I'd argue that even in a pre-Encanto world, it wouldn't cut it. I'm gonna start off on a positive note and compliment the episode for one thing. And even that compliment has an asterisk over it. When we first see La Brea in a flashback, we see that she's plus size. And when she shows up to La Cienega's house, it's revealed that she lost a lot of weight since then. And this is treated like some big glow up. The episode synopsis even calls her an ugly duckling turned swan, but all she did was lose weight. She didn't look bad. This really did not sit well with me, and for most of the episode it went unaddressed. So I wondered what was even the point of having this be a thing. But then it's revealed in the end that La Brea's mother forced her to try and lose the weight and constrict her body so she could appear thinner than La Cienega. The whole time, Tia Melrose was projecting her jealousy of Sunset onto her daughter. So that's where the whole generational trauma thing is supposed to come in. With that in mind, I can at least give the episode props for subverting a toxic trope and using it to address real traumas that would lead someone to losing so much weight so drastically. The problem is that Melrose wasn't the only source of trauma for La Brea. La Cienega bullied her. Even in the flashback that's supposed to explain why La Brea had been pulling pranks on La Cienega all these years, something that was also a last minute introduction, it was only because La Cienega was being needlessly mean to her. So the flashback wasn't even needed. At this point, we already know that La Brea's mom was putting all this extra pressure on her and she was lashing out because of it. We didn't need to add this extra reveal that, oh, La Brea had been pranking La Cienega all this time. What does this add that makes the story any better? I feel that if you were gonna do this, focus more on the fact that La Cienega's bullying didn't make the trauma that La Brea was experiencing at home any better, and La Brea internalized it for all these years and is only acting out now because of all that pent up and unresolved trauma boiling to the surface. This way, you can still show how these issues have been affecting La Brea for years, while also showing that La Cienega played her own role in this as well, because La Cienega is no Isabela. With Isabela, there was pressure from her family to be perfect, and she projected her frustrations with that pressure onto Mirabel. Mind you, explanation is not justification, but it's at least something. La Cienega doesn't have any of that. She's just a nasty person for no reason, and has been that way from the beginning of the show. So when an episode has her being the quinceañera version of a bridezilla and takes away time that should be focused on her relationship with La Brea, or better yet, La Brea herself, it's not doing itself any favors. Funnily enough, there is a show that had a very similar challenge of having to make a usually antagonistic character sympathetic, and thankfully I already did a video on it. I'll have a card in the corner so you can get a more detailed analysis, but here's the basic gist. In the All Grown Up episode, Lucky 13, Angelica is planning her 13th birthday. But a lot of things don't go right for her, and there are 3 main points that elevate this episode above Raging Bully. Firstly, the bad things that happen to Angelica are not because of her own actions. Most of them are because a malicious person is intentionally setting out to ruin her out of cruel spite. Secondly, despite it all, she never once belittles or mistreats her 2 best friends, who are nothing but supportive of her throughout the entire episode. Thirdly, and most importantly, when she learns that Tommy was responsible for saving her party, the first thing she does is call him and his friends over to thank them in person, and she invites them to sit with her in the VIP section. Despite Angelica being a mean girl bully for much longer than La Cienega, Lucky 13 managed to give us a story that actually makes the viewer care about what she's going through. And while Angelica doesn't suddenly become a nice girl after all of this, she's not as actively malicious as she used to be. All Grown Up is no serialized show, and it doesn't need to be, but the events of this episode mattered for Angelica's character. And I think that's what's most frustrating about this episode. I don't have reason to be confident that any of this is gonna matter. I was optimistic with Maya, and that optimism paid off, but I don't extend that same courtesy to La Cienega because unlike Maya, she had multiple times where she was shown kindness or mercy by one of her biggest victims and never changed her behavior after those experiences. Maya changed for the better, and that's good. But it's not a good look when you have Maya learn to be better, and you have that lesson stick. Meanwhile, La Cienega is just allowed to continue to be on her bullshit, because there would be nothing else to her character otherwise. She's the Latina Cindy Vortex. I said in my very first review of this series that Louder and Prouder is very much like the original Proud Family show, for better and for worse. This is where the worst part comes in, because the way this episode handled its themes feels very dated. I know that I'm being a lot harsher today than I've been throughout this season, and I've passed the 5-minute mark, but I felt it was necessary to be a bit more detailed in order to get the point across effectively. There's only one episode left in the season, and I'm an optimist by nature, so even though these last 2 episodes haven't been great, I can at least hope that we get a decent finale. Fingers crossed. Let me know what you thought of the episode down below, and until next time, keep it sketchy, folks. Peace.